All right, Scott, we've got NVS fins with us today, and I've got a special one-off pair.
Oh man, those are wonderful. The boardroom's twin fin set that they provided for us at the boardroom show.
I shouldn't say one-off. These are set 5 of 11. So there was 11 sets made, and I got set number 5. I would imagine you have set number 1 probably.
I need to look at the number, but I'm super thankful to the guys at NVS for crafting those one-offs and for doing the hard work that they do, right? Making really incredible fins, which, as you and I often pontificate about, fins are sort of the engine of the surfboard.
Well, this is kind of an illustration of their abilities at NVS to do small batches. So I know you can go to their website and see they work with a lot of shapers to do like their own lines of fins. But if you're a shaper who doesn't want to bring it, doesn't want to do a ton, you don't want to hit a minimum order of 100 sets or something like that, you could reach out to them and they could do small runs, which is kind of incredible. And I've heard of them even just doing one-offs, like, and not even with shapers, but with surfers, listeners of the podcast who wanted a specific design that wasn't available or like used to be available 10 years ago as a fin that they loved and they can't get now. And they had NVS recreate just one offset. So really kind of incredible customer service and attention to detail. Naked Viking is the brand name, but it's surfnvs.com is the website. So check it out.
Yeah, they did that for me. They made me a one-off. There was a really great FCS fin that Tom Carroll made. I think it was called the Blue Line. And it had really small, it was a quad set. And the whole set was rather small. And a couple of the fins were really canted. I think it was the back set. Yeah. But anyway, those guys at NVS made me a set similar to that.
Did you have to give them did you have like a example that they could pull from?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Awesome. Well, yeah, surfnvs.com. And then you can also grab them actually at realwatersports.com, which is our retail partner. And they're called Real Water Sports because they have anything you need for any water sport. Surfboards, kiteboards, the hard good stuff, but also the soft good stuff, board bags, wetsuits, leashes, traction, everything, including fins. One-stop shop.
Yeah, and of course they have the great YouTube channel which does board reviews with Brett Barley, which are a must view. It really kind of helps you if you're in the market looking for boards. What a great thing to have a really red hot surfer be able to kind of dial in his feelings on certain boards.
Totally agree. And they also do the interviews with the shapers too. And a lot of the shapers they work with do proprietary models just for Real Water Sports. So they've got videos up there with Christensen, Maurice Cole, a whole, who's who of surfers and shapers. So check it out. Insightful and entertaining at realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy, David. It's Wednesday. It's already the middle of January, man. 2 weeks into January. January sneaks up on you quick because you've sort of got like a week of holiday hangover. You're putting away all the stuff, climbing into the attic. Before you know it, it's Wednesday, January 14th. This is Spit, the Spit Podcast. David Lee Scales, Scott Bass, talking all things surf and some other stuff.
When I was typing our date into our show headline, I put 2005. I feel like it's the end of January 2005. That's how quick it sneaks up on you.
Wow. 2005.
Yeah, well, here we are, and you brought us a teaser last week of Stab in the Dark, but guess what? They just released it last night. I'm getting lots of banter online, lots of incoming DMs about it.
Yeah.
So we've got Kelly Slater in the notes. We've got the Wave of the Winter, December's winner got picked. So we got that and a couple of other things going on in the surf world. But did you have anything before we get into Kelly Slater?
Well, I've got a Who Said That. I tried to stump you here real quick before we kick off the Stab in the Dark stuff. This is the portion of the show where I try to stump David with a quote from a famous surfer, and then I offer 4 potential surfers who the quote could come from. So let me begin here, and I quote David. I was on a strict training regime at the time. I was a vegetarian and trying to stay away from hard booze. I figured if I'd traveled all that way to compete in a surf contest, I owed it to myself and my sponsors to try my best. My roommate at the hotel was Reno Abalera, a great young Hawaiian surfer who was teaching me some yoga postures. Reno and I would get up early in the morning and do yoga, then go surf, trying to get ready for the contest. David, who said that? Was it A, A, Mike Doyle, B, Felipe Pomar, C, Corky Carroll, or D, Mark Martinson?
Wow, this is tough. I'm going to go D.
D, Mark Martinson?
Dang it.
Wrong. You're wrong, David. You are wrong.
So I threw out Felipe. Felipe fits the bill, except he doesn't drink alcohol, full stop. And the quote said, I was trying to stay away from hard booze, meaning they're probably still drinking beer and wine. Felipe wasn't drinking beer and wine. Definitely. So Mike Doyle would have been the other one, and
Corky Carroll.
maybe it could have been Corky, I guess.
It was Mike Doyle.
Oh, okay.
It was Mike Doyle, and he was discussing his trip to Peru, actually, for the big, I think it was the World Contest, but apparently there's a really good interview on the Encyclopedia of Surfing Matt Warshaw's History of Surfing website, eos.surf. And Mike, a wonderful human being, and sadly no longer with us, but what a great guy, and a fun guy to be around, very energetic, lots of stories. And go check it out if you're interested in the Peru contest and Mike Doyle and his anecdotes about it. It's pretty funny.
So that's a generation that I don't know enough about. And the longer I do Surf Splendor, their names come up in, when I'm researching for an interview with somebody else. So I cobbled together little bits of information about each of them, but I didn't get to know any of them. Was he affiliated with the Doyle softboards that existed when I was a kid?
Yeah, that was his thing.
So man, he was just way ahead of that trend.
He was kind of the first.
The way that Wavestorm has taken off, if he rode that, I mean, his family's legacy would be, his grandkids would be going to college for free.
Yeah. I don't know how he did with the Doyle softboards, but I'm sure he sold quite a few.
I mean, they existed, but they were only in surf shops. They didn't have a Costco level of distribution.
Yeah, exactly.
So awesome. I've only heard great things about him.
Yeah, he was a cool guy.
Did you know him personally?
Not personally, but I spoke with him and dealt with him, on occasion.
Yeah. Very good.
More of an associate.
Right.
He wouldn't know me from Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were a more dapper, dignified class of gentlemen back in that day.
That's actually what he said about the Peruvians. He goes into depth about the Peruvian and the state of the surfers down there, and of course that club Waikiki down there in Peru, and it was basically aristocrats. Yeah. And they had servants carrying your boards down to the beach, and I think Mike was a little uncomfortable with it all, but and I guess those Peruvians just wanted to party hard with their surf heroes, and so it was on.
Well, I don't know. I feel like we discussed it here not that long ago, but it seemed to be the reason why they did that was they had, the founders had been to Waikiki, and they were pulling from the idea that surfing was reserved for royalty. So that was kind of what they were building off of.
Yeah.
I'm glad those days are long gone. No offense, royalty. Glad it's available to the plebes.
Are they, though?
I don't know.
Stab in the Dark, episode 1. Kelly Slater. We've got to be, it's hard to not be excited. It almost feels like this is the final one. They can't do it any better than this. Like, what are they going to do next? It feels almost impossible. They've got 5 past champions and an 11-time world champion surfer who's arguably the greatest communicator about the boards that are under his feet and how they feel and how they work. I don't know how they do better than this. It's a little premature to be talking like that as we only have episode 1 dropping. But this is exciting. I'm so excited for this. And the five shapers: John Pizell, Darren Handley, Britt Merrick, Matt Biolos, and Mauricio Zuvi, all past winners of Stab in the Dark. David, your thoughts?
Are you holding back a spoiler intentionally? The sixth shaper?
No, I figured we could get there. But the episode kind of, the first, 30 minutes are pretty much these five guys.
Well, it's 37 minutes long. This is a very interesting take. This is a completely different approach than any version of Stab in the Dark we've ever seen before. There was very, very little surfing in this episode. Now, I saw complaints in the comments section about that, and I think those complainers are missing a point. Like, I found this to be tremendously valuable. Basically what this episode is shapers talking about surfboard design. They're also such great personalities individually that I'm happy to be a fly on the wall, just exposed to their personality, because they are revealing their personality. I mean, to be honest, they were very curt and very frank. And they shared stories from the past that were kind of salacious, and they gave strong opinions about each other's boards and about each other's personalities. So I found this to be like, I'd almost rather hear from these guys than the surfer themselves. And we've never seen this before, where they get the shapers together. In every other version of Stab in the Dark, at best, they give you an interview with the shaper, one-on-one with somebody behind the camera, but we've never seen them in the room together interacting. So again, very, very little surfing. This was all about shapers getting to know their personalities and their designs, but I found it to be fantastic, fresh take.
Well, totally agreed, and agree. And I think I said as much last time when I was sort of teasing this episode, but there's just the candor is fantastic, and it just gets better as they get a little bit more lubricated with the tequila that they're drinking during this. And one of the things that I think we could maybe discuss, or I'll throw at you, is something that Britt Merrick said, and he said it before, but basically that Stab in the Dark is and I'm quoting Britt here, Stab in the Dark is the world title of shaping, because it's the only format where the surfer isn't the most important factor. Britt is a 3-time winner of Stab in the Dark. Now, Darren Handley sort of took umbrage with that, saying, and by the way, Darren has 13 world titles under his belt as a shaper, and he's the 2-time Stab in the Dark victor. But Darren dismissed this equivalency that Britt threw out there. And I'll quote Darren here. He says, "Nothing compares to the level of investment that went into Mick, Steph, and Molly's world title years. If you could see the amount of time and energy that goes into making sure Ethan Ewing's equipment is dialed in for this season, you'd see why that payoff outweighs a Stab in the Dark victory." And Britt Merrick follows that up with, anyone who shaped for Kelly or Mick in their heyday was going to win a world title, as if to say, look, it's the surfer, not the shaper in that regard. And I could have made a surfboard for Mick Fanning, and he would have won.
Both are correct, and I think this illustrates exactly what I was saying, is distinct personalities who are not afraid to share their viewpoints. So I think that DH is absolutely accurate. Like, the level of time and effort he put in, the result of that is the 13 world titles. No question about it. But I think that Britt's also right, which is when you have a rocket ship of an athlete, they're going to achieve their goals no matter what. But I think that there is a way for the shaper to fumble that ball still. So that might be kind of what Britt didn't say. And Britt, I'm sure, has much deeper thoughts than what he communicated there or what made the final edit. But there is a version of a world champ winning on your boards and then deciding to go work with somebody else later just because maybe you weren't putting in the same investment that they put in as the surfer. So DH happens to be a rocket ship of his own, and he's willing to do the same level of commitment that Stephanie Gilmore and Mick Fanning and whoever else committed to. And that's where you have this kind of incredible combo. And I definitely think Britt's that guy too. He's just got to find the surfer who is singular in their generation.
Yeah, I agree with you. Both of them are correct, and I have some other thoughts on it I'll get to in a little bit. But these 5 shapers, Paizel, Hanley, Britt Merrick, Matt Biolos, and Mauricio Zuvi, when they get in the same room together and start interacting, it was very clear which one was sort of, I don't want to say different, but of a I guess I'll say different, a different sort of mindset, or a different energy, perhaps a different energy. And I thought that was really telling.
Mauricio?
Yeah. Mauricio is very reserved. And look, you and I'm a big fan of Mauricio. And there's obviously nothing wrong with being reserved. I think it's great. But it was kind of obvious that if you were to, play that psychological game, like remove the one that doesn't belong, it seemed like Mauricio, he's just such a sweet, even-tempered guy,
Well, definitely there's a personality distinction, but I think there's also a bit of those other guys have spent time together for decades. And I think Mauricio is new to that club. Mauricio definitely hasn't spent time with those guys over the course of 20 years. If anything, it's maybe tighter than 10 years. It might be the last 5 years. Mauricio and Sharp Eye Surfboards have not been in this world title conversation until maybe 5 to 7 years ago. And they've had a really fast, ascent. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And so I think that there's his reticence, a different personality type would barge into the room and just say, yeah, I deserve to be here. The proof's in the pudding. He's not that guy. To your point, his personality is much more conservative, but he also doesn't have the exposure to those group of guys. And those group of guys are gruff. They're thick-skinned, they're brash. And so, yeah, that plays into it too. But it doesn't undermine, or it doesn't call into question anything to do with the surfboards themselves or the boards that Sharp Eye is building, of course. It's just a matter of getting it, whether or not he fits into the group. But the counterpoint to that, to me, is DH. I guess you could make an argument that Britt and Biolos are equally outspoken. But to me, DHD has been so on his own path. Like, I don't see any of those DHD boards in America, really. So I've never held them. I've never checked them out. But anytime they appear in any of these competitions, the people say these boards are so different. And it's interesting to me that, of course, in a electric acid surfboard test, the boards are very different because the parameters are so much broader. But with this, the parameters were specifically 5'10", 27.5 liters, and 5 fins. So how much room do you really have to play there? And yet every time people pick up a DH, they're like, this thing's totally different, which is fascinating to me.
Well, this is sort of the Super Bowl of Stab in the Dark. These are all past champions. And here's some interesting statistics, I guess, that Sam McIntosh sent along. Over the 10 years of Stab in the Dark, they've had 8 world-class surfers blind test 117 surfboards from 37 shapers, and yet for fewer than 14% of the entrants have ever won. 5 names out of 37 shapers. That's it. And of course, Slater's the perfect test pilot here, as I mentioned earlier. Sam goes on to say that Slater has never been board agnostic, which is for sure the case, especially after Channel Islands. Across 3 decades, multiple design eras, and several competitive renaissances, Slater has been obsessively involved in equipment, tweaking rockers and outlines and rails and volume distributions and channels, often years before those ideas became mainstream. Your thoughts on only 5 names out of 10 years of Stab in the Dark and Kelly Slater?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Well, let's address the 5 names only to have won out of all those years. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think, I think that there are, it makes a lot of sense for the pointy thruster experiment. I think in this, DH refers to this as these are the Ferraris of surfboards, basically. They're super finely tuned. And so once you're operating at that end of the spectrum, there are guys who have been doing it for 30 and 40 years who have made over 100,000 surfboards, and they are that well refined. And I think we know those names already. So it's very unlikely for somebody who's made 20,000 boards to be able to net the level of refinement that these guys are able to net. Kelly Slater as the best test pilot, I am not questioning, but he is older, and I think not as, precise and sensitive to be riding a 27.5 liter surfboard as I would think. I was surprised to see that volume so low. Like this feels like what he would have been riding, when he was 35 or something like that. So I wasn't surprised to see him as the test pilot, but what I was surprised to see is the boards that they built for him feel like they're something he would have been riding 20 years ago.
Yeah. How much do you think he weighs? He's probably like $165.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. 5'9", something like
But
that.
the level of refinement on those boards and like the foil and all of that is something that Ethan Ewing would be riding on tour right now from my naked eye. I'm not obviously fondling the boards. Actually, I'd be curious. We could probably look up what volume Ethan Ewing rides. So that struck me, and I'd be interested if you had that thought too. And then number 2, am I the only one who thinks it's weird that they put 5 fin boxes in these boards?
Okay, so the first thing is, the boards do seem small for a 55-year-old guy. Or how old is Kelly? I think he's 52. Anyway,
I'll look it up while you're talking.
over 50, right?
Yeah.
That 27.5 liters does seem like a small little board. It makes me wonder, like, because they made the boards. All of them said in the piece, look, Kelly's not going to surf in crappy waves. These boards are going to be ridden in good waves. And I just wonder how big of a wave can Kelly at 52 years old paddle those boards and ride those. I mean, he's Kelly Slater. He can probably do anything, but the board seems small. And the second bit, the refinement.
No.
Right.
Is it odd? It's odd to me that they put 5 fins in. Like when you're going for this level of refinement and precision, you think that you would also have a very precise fin setup that you would ride in this board. It seems odd to put all of this thought and effort into the refinement and then go, but pick your own path. You can go 3 fins or you can go 4 fins. Your choice.
Well, that's actually one of the most interesting parts of this whole episode, this whole season, because Kelly is going to go, like Kelly could hate a board and make it a 4 fin and surf at some drainy little super tubes type of wave and just be like, oh my God, this board's so much better now. I was going to kick it out of the equation and now it's in the equation. Wow, who knew I was going to make it a 2+1 with big side fins, twin fins, and a little trailer. And now this thing's spicy. And so that really opens up each and every one of these boards in a sort of a unique way, right?
It does. I think Kelly is obviously savvy enough to identify this board doesn't work as a tri-fin. I'm not going to throw it out. I'm going to try it as a 4-fin. Like he would have that amount of discernment. But to me, the question is, again, we're talking millimeter of details. We're talking like high precision detail in sanding and where the hard edge stops to the millimeter, all that stuff. And then you have all this added weight of extra fin boxes that you're not going to use.
Well, I'll tell you what. I could be wrong here, but I'm thinking that this is just an incredible marketing play for Firewire because they have their own series of fins, accessories. They have, I think they're called endorphins. Right?
Kelly's endorphins.
Yeah. So this is going to be an incredible opportunity for the endorphins to just be a huge part of this story.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me at all if you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that's part of the play here. And by the way, brilliant move marketing wise. You know, we're going to be talking about endorphins for a while here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're going to see, and frankly, they should, you know, the fins are huge, like we said earlier, fins are a huge part. They're basically the engine of the board. It makes sense that you would switch out, you know, your fin sizes and foils and all of that stuff. So, you know, it'll be interesting. I'm sure that at some level, those guys are like, Kelly will do this, and here are the stipulations. And one of the stipulations is we want 5 boxes in because we want to showcase our fins.
That was literally one of the 3 stipulations in regard to the board design itself. 5 fins, 27.5 liters, and a 510.
Wow, that's cool. Well, one of the boards is a swallowtail,
which was an interesting choice. That was the Sharp Eye, Marcio Zuvi's board. They did not explain why. He did not address it. So I'm not sure what the idea was.
I think it's very interesting, and you could say that it's going to separate his board from the others. I mean,
yeah,
this could really help, you know, move the board along in the discussion.
Yeah. Well, I always find it interesting when they do the blind test to see if people can identify which boards are which, and the shapers. Each of the shapers were tasked with identifying whose boards. And the best got, I think, 4 out of 6. I think DH got 4 out of 6, and maybe Biolis was the other one who got 4 out of 6. So nobody got 6 out of 6, which is interesting to me. Good news is they all got their own board correct, because if any of them didn't get their own board, I was going to be a little bit shocked. But
you know, that would be embarrassing.
It would be. But does that surprise you, like at that level, that they can't identify 6 out of 6?
I'm not sure, because I haven't really. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because on some level, it's like if you can't see the difference, I don't know. I think what's more telling is that there's 2 guys that got 4 out of 6. I think that's the most important fact here. And so the guys that didn't get the other ones, maybe they're just in a little myopic, you know, tunnel vision about their stuff, and they don't look, like even Biola said, I don't look at other people's boards. I just don't look at other people's boards. But he got 4 out of 6.
It's true, though. They don't. Like, that is what they continually say. And so that does answer exactly why it plays out that way. But that surprises me. These guys, each of these guys is traveling around the world, going to surfboard factories, presumably being exposed, and they're on tour, going on tour to different events, you know, and being exposed to those boards. So it does surprise me a little bit that they don't just have better awareness what the market, what other people are doing in the market. They're direct competitors.
Well, Mick Fanning,
I know,
stepped into the equation, and didn't he get all of them?
I don't think he transposed 2 of them. There was
Transposed. What do you mean transposed?
like there was 2 that he flip-flopped that he got wrong, but the other ones he all got right.
Yeah.
But he was way more confident and way more knowledgeable than, like, clearly than anybody. Like, he picked it up and assessed it and was like, this is a CI because of this is a DH because of that, this is, you know, and there was 2 that he just happened to get wrong, but you could see, like, when I was in high school and you had to do long division in math class, they're like, you did all the steps correct, you just got it wrong at this one point, you know? Like, he knew the long division, just happened to net the wrong answer.
Right.
But yeah, Mick Fanning was incredible. So quick side note on Mick. Mick happened to be in town wherever they were shooting this piece with all the shapers coming in. And so they asked Mick to come by and do his assessment because he's been a stab in the dark partner in the past, a pilot. And I found him to be incredible. He was very insightful, very knowledgeable, and provided history lessons. So I talked in the past when I think we were covering the electric acid surfboard test, how I like these, you know, little sidebars into a deep history about Steve Liss and the fish or whatever it was at that time. It was nice to have Mick Fanning highlight, like, oh yeah, Slater had this one board that he wrote at J Bay, and then he took it to lowers, then he did this and that, and then they show footage of all that stuff because Mick was on tour and he has stories from behind the scenes of all that stuff. So I thought he did a great job with a current assessment and then a deep dive into the past.
Yeah, I would agree. And frankly, he did a stab in the dark already.
And an electric acid surfboard test that Don
Yeah, he did both. Yeah. Your thoughts on mixing alcohol into the equation and its effect on the episode?
Added entertainment value, and I don't think that it sacrificed any intellectual value.
Right, I would agree. I thought it was, it could have gone sideways, and I'm sure in the editing they took care of anything that did go sideways. So
I think
it was good.
Look, those guys are in their 50s. If they don't know how to moderate their alcohol intake, I would be shocked. Like they got
Prepare to be shocked, my friend. Prepare to be shocked.
they got loose enough to like have a good time with their buddies, but not so loose as to, create a problem. But look, I was the most surprising to me was Britt Merrick as being as frank as he was. I expect that from Matt Biolis, who interestingly said he's toning it down. I definitely expect that from DH, who doesn't need alcohol, to share his opinions. And Britt Merrick, who I've spent the most time with out of all these guys, I know him to be kind of frank and curt off camera, but he calls out, he goes, look, 12 years ago, we did this Surfline Shapers Roundtable, which, by the way, I remember that series and I loved it when it came out. And he goes, I showed up and Matt Biolis, who didn't even remember having been there, said, what the F are you doing here? Didn't you go start a church in Texas? Basically saying, we're at this Shapers Roundtable, table for big boys who have been doing this as a career. Who are you? Like, you just blow in because of your dad's name kind of a thing. And Britt said, he was right. Biolis was right at that time. I was not qualified to be there. And then later in the roundtable discussion, he made a comment, forgets what the comment was, but DH called him out and goes, who invited you here? Basically putting him in his spot. And so Britt acknowledged, he called them out both to their face. And they both, Matt almost like backpedaled a little bit, started to, and then Britt goes, no, it's okay. Like you had a right to tell me that at the time. And I took it. What kind of sidebar interesting is that Britt definitely didn't back down. He tripled down and built an incredible business in the last 10 years and is now one of their biggest competitors. So beware if you're going to call somebody out like that. But Britt used this entire story basically to say the sixth shaper who is yet to be revealed doesn't deserve to be at this table. And I would tell that to him to his face.
Yeah.
And so again, the most surprising thing was having Britt be the one who is now the provocateur.
And who was that sixth shaper?
Dan Mann, shaper at Firewire Surfboards. So here is now the controversy.
Yeah. So Dan Mann, who is been shaping for decades and is an incredible surfer and an incredible paddler. He's a world-class long-distance paddler as well, and he shapes his own paddle boards. The comment is basically, you don't belong here. Why are you here? And in fact, during the episode, they immediately went, that one needs to be thrown out, because in other Stab in the Darks, Mick threw out the Darren Hanley just because it wasn't fair. And I think some other guys, it happened to some other guys too. Somebody might have thrown out one of Matt's boards maybe in the Kolohe one, or I'm not sure which one. I think it was the Taj one. Wasn't it a Taj one where they threw one out?
It could be yes to both those. The one that I remember specifically was Dane Reynolds casting aside the Channel Island surfboard in the electric acid surfboard test.
So those five guys were like, hey, this board shouldn't even be in here. The Dan Man shouldn't be in here. It's not cool. He makes boards for Kelly. Let's do it like we've done it in the past and be a gentleman and just discard this one. Like, that's the right thing to do. So it was kind of interesting, right? Because they're like, he doesn't belong here, but throw his board out.
Well, there's two.
Well, which is it?
No, there's two things going on there.
Right.
He doesn't belong to be here, or we should cast him out because he's Kelly Slater's shaper. So he has tons of inside track knowledge. But the other detail is the premise of this was former winners. Dan Man has not won a former Stab in the Dark. So I think that was the bigger point. And that was
Right.
Britt's point
But-
that he was making with he doesn't deserve a seat at this table is he hasn't won a Stab in the Dark in the past.
Right. And I would say you're probably correct, but tell that to Kelly Slater because none of us would be here without Kelly saying Dan Man has to be involved.
That's the thing. They did tell that to Kelly Slater. Now, this is where I thought the story got more interesting, and I appreciated Stab's way of dealing with it. Basically, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes with any of this stuff, like NDAs, contracts, whatever. And Stab pulled back the curtain. I don't know entirely, but they definitely pulled back the curtain enough to answer any of the questions that would have shown up in the comments section after the fact. And so among those things were Kelly Slater would not participate. Kelly Slater is a majority owner of Firewire Surfboards, so they lay that out on the table. And they say Kelly Slater would not participate in this experiment unless they could have a Firewire surfboard in the competition. So at that point, it's up for the rest of those shapers to either opt in or opt out. Do you want to play this game or not? They all obviously opted in, but they're going to share their opinions once they're on camera. Fair enough.
Right.
The other detail that Firewire attempted to do in a marketing kind of savvy marketing move, and again, Stab did not have to reveal this, but they did, was here's what we'll do, you guys. If any of you shapers win this thing, let's do a board model together. Let's do a Firewire shaped by one of you shapers, and we will give you an unheard of $75 per board royalty. I've heard Stab Magazine has reported some of these royalty numbers in their How Surfers Get Paid series, and the highest number they've ever shared was $40 a board. Immediately thereafter, I've heard from people at those brands that number is way too high. They're like, Stab kind of just prints stuff sometimes without getting full sign off or full checking all the numbers, and that is way too high. We do not pay that. So I hear it's more like under $20 range, basically. Let's call it 10 to $20 per board is the fair royalty number. So Firewire offering a $75 royalty is a real gift. That's saying we want to be fair and equitable in this exchange. Clearly this is a marketing deal for us, but let's all benefit from it together. Interestingly, only 2 shapers agreed to sign that. And do you remember who they were? It was definitely Biolis, and I forget who the other one was.
I don't know.
I forget who the other one was, but I was glad to see the non-signers because I was like,
We need to nail down who's signed and who doesn't because that adds to. I'm surprised we don't have the second name, but we know Matt signed on and somebody else did.
yeah, and I don't want to. I have 2 names in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate and get it wrong, but you can just go watch the episode and see.
Yeah, exactly.
But to be honest, I was like, look, I understand why you would sign, of course, but also thank God the other ones stuck to their guns and didn't, because the subtext and something that Stab, actually DH did, Stab didn't address this, but DH addressed this, is that the Firewire model of doing business is contrary to all of those other guys' way of doing business and has disrupted the market tremendously. And specifically, the boards are manufactured overseas and then they're brought back and sold in America and Australia and other markets. Obviously, manufacturing overseas, you could do it a lot cheaper. So they're brought back cheaper than a lot of domestically made surfboards can be made for. And then they're sold at retail on a commission model. So traditionally, board builders would have to front the cost for building the boards, then go to retail and say, how many boards do you want? And they go, I want 10. And they go, okay, here's an invoice. Either it's due right now or it's due in 30 days. So the retailer had an incentive to sell those boards within 30 days so that they could turn over their cash. Firewire, because of the economics of overseas manufacturing, was able to bring containers of surfboards back, take them to the retail and go, hey, we'd rather have them sitting on your shelf than in our warehouse. So why don't we just put them on your shelf? Not only are we not going to hand you an invoice now, but once you sell the board, which may be in 60 days, you then have 30 days to pay the invoice. So the retailer, of course, sees the benefit of that. And in a very short order, Firewire took over a lot of retail space. So this became a crux for a lot of other board builders who were operating under the traditional model. Firewire didn't invent this model. This model's been around for a long time, and it really exists almost, pervasively in all other areas of retail, all other industries. But they were the ones to really, really do it in the surfboard industry. And again, it really disrupted the market. And I know a lot of those shapers who are participating in this have a thorn in their side about it. And they were upset about it at the time, and they still hold a little bit of a grudge. So it would be difficult to see them sign on with kind of somebody who they saw as their biggest threat in competition.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, are you more, as a fan of this episode, are you now pulling for those that didn't sign the dotted line?
It doesn't necessarily change my opinion of any of them. Those guys are all big enough business that, yeah, I understand the decisions that they have to make at a certain point. So no, and I have personal experiences with each of them that I think inform who I'm rooting for more than that would. That doesn't necessarily affect me so much anymore.
Yeah.
But
Well,
let's talk Dan. Let's kind of went on a tangent there. Let's talk Dan Mann. So Dan Mann catches the ire, of course, of these guys for the reasons that we already stated, and his association with Firewire, I think, to a certain degree. But he is, from anybody who's ever dealt with him, the nicest guy in the world, reported, from anybody who's spent time with him, and then also a super competent shaper. Very, very talented in his own right. He does not have the number of boards built. He says when they interview him, because they actually interview him separately than all of these other guys, and I think even share with him some of the information that those other shapers had said about him, and Dan confronts it face to face. He laughs all along the way. He's a very affable dude. And he says kind of in his own defense, like, look, I've shaped tens of thousands of boards or something to that effect. And it's kind of like, well, dude, these guys are at hundreds of thousands over here. So tens of thousands is cool, but it's still not a seat at this table. You know what I mean? Now, that doesn't mean that he can't shape the winning board, because obviously he works with Kelly more than anybody.
Yeah. Couple things. So luckily, Sam sent me this episode before he gave me a sneak peek. So I got to watch the episode when I was at Surf Expo last week. And I don't know if I told you this, but I watched the episode and was immediately engaged and enamored with it. It was so well done, as we've talked about. And literally walked into Surf Expo and walked right into Dan Mann. And I was like, dude, these guys threw you under the bus, man. It's kind of brutal, like, be prepared for this. And he's just such a good human being. He just takes it all in stride. He basically, he's kind of got a 30,000 foot level. Like, dude, look where we are. Like, we're all living an incredible life.
Yeah.
And it's all good. And he's just got such a great outlook on things. I'm just such a huge fan of Dan Mann's. He's just a wonderful person. And, oh, by the way, you can call him up and get a custom surfboard if you want. If you don't want a Firewire,
Right. Yeah. Well, so I think Dan's almost the perfect guy to be in this position where he's going to be catching barbs from these other guys, because he can take it.
I kind of hope they don't throw his board out. I think his board should stay in the whole way. If they're going to throw barbs, then let him in.
Well, here's the problem. I thought you stated this is a savvy marketing move. Well, no, actually, you stated it was a savvy marketing move for the Finns, which you're correct with. I think this is actually a misstep of marketing to include the Firewire in the competition, because if they don't throw it out and it's a legit contender and it gets last place, how do you spin that?
I don't know. That's a really good point.
I think they only have something to lose here, because if the board wins, looks like the fix is in. Even if the fix isn't in,
The fix is in.
well, even if the fix isn't in,
Yeah. It looks like the optics are weird.
even if the fix isn't in, you can point to the fact that Dan Mann has shaped 1,000 surfboards for Kelly up until this point, and so clearly he had an advantage. So it really undermines the legitimacy of the competition. If the board loses, it looks like clearly he's not making the best boards for Kelly Slater. Kelly could have been working with a better, a better fit for a shaper up until this point. So I saw this as a poor marketing decision for Firewire to force this. The fin move, on the other hand, like you stated, super savvy, like no brainer right there. But I do think ultimately, it undermines the credibility of the competition. Like if it is Stab's main desire to create kind of a legitimate playing field and identify, quote, the world champ of shapers, this undermines that. Now, the reality is I don't think that is Stab's full intent. I think their full intent is just to have something that's super entertaining and provides insights about surfboard design. And so let's not forget that is kind of the main point.
Well, look, regarding who's going to win, some have suggested, like Britt Merrick, that either, winning Stab in the Dark or a world title makes you sort of the champion of the Super Bowl of shaping. It's either one or the other. And I would suggest to you that the Icons of Foam shape-off at the boardroom is certainly a barometer of shaping skills that can be thrown into the mix along with Stab in the Dark or shaping boards for world champions. I'm going to give Darren Handley or any of these guys a blank and a planer and a board you've never seen before, and you get an hour and a half to replicate it. That's a pretty good, as I mentioned, barometer test of your shaping skills. You don't get a computer. Here's the tool. Go shape this surfboard. And there are only two shapers of those 6 that have won the Icons of Foam shape-off, that have taken that challenge and won it. And that's Matt Biolis and Dan Mann.
And have they all competed in it? I don't think Marcio has.
No, but some of them won't even do it.
Right.
Some of them won't do it. And that's fine. I'm not here to, I guess I am throwing a little shade, but I'm just saying this is another test.
Yes.
Stab in the Dark is a test. Shaping boards for world champions is a test. But I mean, I've got Ricky Carroll who's won this thing 3 times with 3 completely different boards. And he replicated them to a T. And, it would be interesting, really, to somehow try to put all these 3 things and find some synergy, these 3 competitions together somehow. But your thoughts on that?
I totally understand, totally agree with what you're saying, but what my response is, it's a totally different test.
I think we're just trying to determine the greatest shaper.
That's too vague of a description, because I'll take DHD as an example. DHD is spending more than 40 hours a week, probably 80 hours a week, over on this edge of a fringe to build the best boards for a couple of people who are trying to win world titles. He doesn't give a crap about replicating somebody else's design.
And I didn't say he did. I'm just saying, if you want a barometer of shaping skills.
Well, this, again, it's a different test. He goes, I don't care about a barometer of shaping skills. I'm building boards for world title surfers. Right. So it's a different test entirely. It'd be like, like telling, an engineer who's top of their field to come over and do an art project.
Yeah, like to carve a spoon out of wood and wood shop.
Yeah, and I'm not saying...
wait a minute, it's a little bit more involved.
I'm not saying the art project is less than, or I'm not trying to denigrate the other competition. So I probably could have picked a better metaphor, but I'm just saying...
Yeah, you could have. I think you need to, actually.
It's a different competition is all that it is. You know what I mean? So I think they all have value. In fact, your thing has way more value, by the way, because nobody's writing Very, very few people are riding what the world champs are riding. You know what I mean? So the argument could be made that you have a much broader appeal for that style of competition. And by the way, not to keep going,
Yeah.
the reason Ricky Carroll, one of the reasons Ricky Carroll has won it 3 times, in addition to him being shaping for 50 years, is that part of his business has been licensing other brands and building those boards. So he's built Ricky Carroll surfboards to his own designs, and then he builds world-class Takeyamas to those designs and Chris Christensen's to those designs.
Yeah.
So
Local motion's a bunch.
he's
Yeah.
spent 50 years prepping for the task that you're asking him to do.
Let me ask you this. If you asked Ricky Carroll, you said, Ricky, you've got 8 months to build a series of boards for Ethan Ewing, so he's going to win the world title. Do you think he could do it? And make Ethan Ewing boards as responsive and sensitive as the ones that Darren Hanley's making?
No, with a caveat. If you said, could Ricky Carroll replicate the boards that DH had made for Ethan, I would say yes, absolutely he can. I think there's, going to be glassing details and techniques that he'd probably need a blueprint for, because you can't just look at a board and identify what those are. So we would need some insights there. But if you gave him 8 months, he could replicate those boards. The difference is DH, it's all about communication with the athlete. And DH has now a decade of communication with the athlete that is going into the next board design that Ricky Carroll cannot replicate in 8 months.
Do you think that Darren could participate in the Icons of Foam shape-off and win?
No.
3 times?
No. Because he hasn't dedicated his career to replicating other people's designs.
What if we gave him 8 months, like we're giving Ricky Carroll,
No,
to get his chops up to speed?
I think he'd absolutely be a contender, but I don't think that you can replace what he's dedicated his career to. I think there's some transfer of skill set, but 8 months does not compare to decades.
I would agree with you that this is apples and oranges, and Darren Hanley's an incredible shaper, and I'm certainly not here to try to say otherwise. And you're right; these things, like I just said, two different things, and at the end of the day, the Icons of Foam shape-off is about lifting up the surfboard builders, whether it be Darren Hanley or Ricky Carroll or anybody in between. It doesn't matter. What we're really trying to do is highlight the fact that the Darren Hanleys of the world are the super important sort of primary spoke through which our culture sprouts. The surfboard shaper, the modern day kahunas who craft our board, whether it be Darren or whoever. These are the heroes. Not heroes is the wrong word, but these are the, like I say, the main line through surf culture, because surfboards are the main line through surf culture.
Totally agree. And
Let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who's going to win?
I can the only set of kind of data that I'm pulling from to make this assessment are the 5 waves that they showed at the end of this episode.
Okay, hold off on that
Okay.
then, please. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on who I think is going to win. It'll be quick. I believe that Matt Biolos is going to win this competition based on what we learned in this episode, the way that he sort of tried to hide some things from Kelly so that Kelly wouldn't immediately throw it out. Not that Kelly would do that. I don't think Kelly's that biased. I think if he likes the board, he likes the board. But Matt did make some little changes that if you saw the episode, you know what he did to try to kind of throw a little curveball perhaps to Kelly.
Okay.
So I think Matt sort of, I could see him winning. Now, speaking of this, the surfing at the end, I remember last time I teased it, I go, dude, the surfing at the end, this is my teaser. It's incredible. The finishing shot. Remember I said the finishing shot. Okay, so the finishing shot. So for the listeners out there, They teased one wave each of Kelly on each of the Shapers' creations. One wave of 6 boards, one wave of 6 Shapers. They just showed Kelly on one wave. Keep in mind, these Shapers had just finished throwing Dan Mann under the bus. By the way, the current reigning Icon of Foam champion, Dan Mann. They just threw him under the bus. Now, the last wave of those that were ridden was on a Dan Mann crafted surfboard. And as the cameraman drifts behind the wave and offers a line of sight of the back of the wave, what you see, David, is equal parts gorgeous, equal parts perfect, equal parts powerful, a voluminous swath of Goliathan in its majesty, a spray in slow motion. It's as if to say to the 5 Shapers, look out, Kelly Slater likes Dan Mann's board. That last hack was incredible, and I do believe the editors did it on purpose,
Totally.
as if to say, bam, stamp, here comes Dan Mann, baby.
100% they did it on purpose, because they say, we're just going to give you one wave of each of these boards ridden, and they gave you a couple of crappy waves. They gave you a couple of waves that the boards looked like they were bogging on. And I'm like, I know you have a better clip of him riding that board, so this did feel like an intentional red herring, maybe.
Just like in your chest.
Yeah. And I don't think I don't think that the editors are trying to like defend Dan Mann or anything like that.
No.
I think
this was pure entertainment.
I think it's more of a red herring for us as the viewers. They're going, oh,
Could be.
yeah,
Could
now
be.
you're going to walk away thinking the Dan Mann's the front runner based on these 5 clips, but I don't think they would reveal the winner in those 5 clips. But I agree with you. That was the best clip. So
that was a fun finishing shot, wasn't it? It made you just go, let's this episode, this whole season thing is going to be good. This episode, what do you call them? Episodes, season.
Yeah, episodes.
These episodes are going to be good.
Yeah, I think. So we didn't say this. Kelly doesn't even appear in this episode. Kelly is not interviewed in this episode. There's no, other than those 5 clips, there's no fresh footage of Kelly in this episode. It's all archival footage and them talking about the surfer, which again, totally different way of shooting and editing this series. So yeah, I'm in, totally hooked. Love the deeper dive into design. Love hearing from the Shapers. Absolutely loved the art direction. Like the graphics packaging, the way they shot it, the interviews, all of it. I mean, it's on par with anything you watch on a Netflix documentary, you know? It's really well done.
Great. It is great. I'm not sure when the next one drops, but probably in a couple of weeks. I imagine they're done shooting Kelly on these boards.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. They usually advertise that, and lately it's been one every 2 weeks, but I did not see an advertisement for this. So, anyways, I did not intend to use the whole episode to talk Stab in the Dark.
That's
but
okay.
It's
good.
Let me also say though.
Let me take a quick break,
go for it.
and we'll come back.
Go for it.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
I got to say that when I urinate, it's often like it's analogous to when I talk on this show. I think I'm finished, and I stop, and then more keeps coming out.
Are you still going now?
Great take. That was wonderful the way you brought that in. That's some improv right there. And as a matter of fact, I am.
Look, you never know.
Yeah,
a little dribble.
Yeah, it's like a basketball game. There's a lot of dribbling.
That's what happens sometimes. So I hear.
Well, I've been told.
Yeah. Well, we're not done with Kelly. We're done with Stab in the Dark, but I don't know if you saw this, but there's a podcast called The Ultimate Human, and Kelly just appeared on that show as a guest. How do you feel before I get into his routines? How do you feel about this whole culture of optimization?
I'm anti. I mean, I'm not anti, but I think that I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I need to wrap my head around, but the idea that there's a podcast called The Ultimate Human and that then somebody goes on it and talks as if they're the ultimate human just seems really vain.
I don't think it necessarily has to do with vanity. It's not saying you'll look like Brad Pitt if you do these things, but it might be saying you'll live a healthier, longer life. Still problematic?
I mean, I think, again, I don't know anything about the podcast. I'm sure they're fine folks and great people, and I'm not here to poo-poo them at all. I just think that the title, "The Ultimate Human," I think you or I probably could have come up with something a little more clever. I don't know.
Well, regardless of the title,
But talking about what you were,
Optimization.
the question you asked, optimization. I am of the opinion that if you optimize yourself spiritually, which is an oxymoron,
true.
but if you optimize yourself spiritually, the rest will follow. And if I'm trying to better myself, there can only be one way to do that, and that is through spiritual growth. And even that spiritual growth, the idea of growing spiritually is not, it's an oxymoron. But
spiritual practice.
or enlightenment, or spiritual practice. Just deeper practice.
It's not called spiritual perfect.
Maybe not even deeper. Just practice.
Just the practice.
I've been really getting into some Eckhart Tolle lately, and I'll try to send you some stuff if you're into listening to it.
Well, I agree with you. And any optimizing influencer, I already kind of put up a certain amount of like stiff arm against, like, bro, tone it down a notch. Like,
Yeah. Don't you see my hair?
exactly. Like in general, I am for health and wellness.
Yeah.
But I think that some of the best gains can be made through inactivity, through boredom, through taking time off, even through indulgence. You know what I mean? It's the yin and the yang kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And this is all just anecdotal. I am clearly not a dietitian, clearly not fitness savvy. But I'm a philosopher, and philosophically, I believe that you absolutely want to set a true north that you work towards every day, and there's value in the discipline. There's tremendous value in putting the right things in your body, but there's also, like, it doesn't need to be optimized. Like, if you exclusively do workouts and exercise every day, I don't know that you end up with a net gain at the end of life, as opposed to those who took time off, ate some sugar, and, read a book or whatever. So anyways, Kelly Slater is obviously into optimization. This interview was not about surf technique at all. It was much more about lifestyle, discipline, holistic habits. And one thing that I think you could take away from Kelly, if you do want to listen to this, is so much focused on natural remedies. So it is very much about putting plants and whole foods in your body as fuel for your body. And, not seeking any kind of, although we talked about ayahuasca last week, but that's a plant, not seeking any like new agey kind of technological solutions to any of humanity's ailments. It's much more about like self-healing from what the earth has provided. He does take supplements, but he talks about plant-derived supplements. They're not like anything freaky. The other thing that he talks about is recovery. A lot of recovery conversation, which I think is much more salient to you and I as we age. Like, he's doing a lot of physical activity. His main physical activity is surfing, but the other hours of the day aren't necessarily focused on cross-training for that physical activity. They're focused on recovery for that activity. So I think that that's an important takeaway that if you're listening, maybe you could look into.
I really appreciate that. I do, because I get caught up in workouts, and sometimes I'm like, my body hurts. Like, what? I'm not 40,
Totally.
Maybe I should recover a little more. Some ice baths and some hot baths.
Well, so he specifically has different ailments than you, I'm sure, but he uses massage, chiropractic, It gets chiropractic adjustments, and then of course stretching, mobility exercises, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's also foods that you can use for inflammation, to reduce inflammation, basically. So those are things that you could look into too, because I definitely notice whenever I get up from a seated position or laying position or whatever, it's a bit of hunched over. The first 3 steps are kind of hunched over, like full old man status. Like
Full on. Like it takes a while to get kind of there, like,
yeah. But I do notice after a night of drinking, let's say, I'm doing that a lot more in the morning. It's like if I do that in the morning, I'm like, oh, why am I so sore today? Oh, yeah. I drank last night. That's inflammation in your body that needs to get reduced, or stretched out or whatever. But anyways, Kelly does have obviously a lifetime commitment to this stuff. And I think that approach of focusing on natural remedies and solutions I find it to be helpful. So if anybody else is listening and they want to listen, that's why it's worth to listen.
Well, I will listen to, what's it called again? The Ultimate Human?
The Ultimate Human. I forget the guy's name.
Ultimate Human.
Gary Brecka is the guy's name, but you could just search the Ultimate Human podcast. They have almost 1 million subscribers on YouTube, so it's huge. I mean, I've never heard of it before, but yeah, they do a good job. I'll check it.
There's
a couple of quick things we can roll through, and then I do want to talk about the Wave of the Winter update real quick, but
yeah,
a couple of quick things. Miguel, I don't know if you saw this story, Miguel Tudela gets suspended for steroid use from the Olympics, from competing he competed in the 2020 Olympics, but he's suspended from competition for 16 months due to doping. And the thing that he tested positive for is called metanoline, which he claims he got exposed to through a medical plasma treatment for an injury. But anti-doping rules mandate that suspension is required, even if there's no intent to dope, even if it is just unintentional. You still have to adhere to this suspension. So that might eliminate his opportunity to compete for the upcoming Los Angeles Olympics in 2028.
I'm not even sure there's going to be an Olympics.
Who
knows?
What could get in the way?
I mean, any number of geopolitical headaches. Who knows?
Ooh.
No, I have no idea. I'm an optimist. Okay, bring on the Olympics.
You worried about the upcoming apocalypse, the impending apocalypse?
No. If it happens, it happens. It's all part of the big plan. I'm not too worried about it.
Okay. Well, did you see that there's an update on the Wave of the Winter?
I did not see this. Tell me who's in the lead.
Well, they are doing monthly updates, basically. So we have the first winner from the December Wave of the Winter. Would you like to see the video clip?
Yeah, for sure. Bring it on.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, thank you. I got it.
So I'm going to show you 3. These are the 3 contenders. And then you could tell me which one is the best wave as you see it. And then I will tell you who actually won. So this first wave, Goofy Footer, Makana Pang at Pipeline, a classic pipe bomb. Let me know if you want to see it again. Second one is a youngster, 18, I think, year old, Luke Tema at Backdoor, kind of classic backdoor runner. And the third is Shane Dorian on a bigger backdoor wave. I would say even deeper, sunnier day, comes out after the spit, gets a little bonus section there.
Well, my sense is that Shane should be the winner.
I absolutely thought Shane should be the winner, and no, Makana Pang with this pipeline wave won. Interesting choice.
I mean, it's a sick drop, and the way he angles into it, he's more or less behind it. But I just feel like Dorian's is more heart-wrenching, a little, obviously much longer. Yeah. But, the thing about these Waves of the Winter is they're so fun because there's so much discourse that can be had about it. Talk about, let's have a beer and discuss, and it's hard to come to a conclusion. I love McConaughey's wave. I think it's at first I was like, "Ah, that's got to be the winner," and then you showed me Dorian's, and Dorian's is pretty incredible.
Well, funnily, I didn't think McConaughey's got to be the winner. When I saw it, I was like, I've seen 10 of those, 10 similar waves through the course of December.
It was more that it was kind of just slightly
Yeah.
behind
He,
the knuckle. You know, he was just behind the knuckle.
yeah, he kind of back.
But it was kind of a short. It was kind of
It was
short.
a short wave,
right?
and it wasn't a huge wave. You know, it was kind of a classic pipe wave. Actually, not a classic pipe wave. That's a mischaracterization. It was a common pipe wave, I think, more than anything on a good day. But incredibly surfed. Well done, McConaughey. He gets $5,000. So we're going to get a $5,000 winner each month, and then there will be a grand winner at the end of the season.
By the way, in the California Gold Vintage Surf Auction coming up in March, we have McConaughey's grandfather's board, a balsa from sort of that Downing Makaha era in the mid 50s, early 50s.
Amazing.
Anyway, if you're interested. Yeah.
Very cool. And something I didn't state, by the way, when I was talking about that Kelly Slater interview, he also kind of references that he plans to compete for the next decade. Not,
I mean, I think he's going to compete until it's over.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's competing right now.
Well,
he just, I'm not sure if he knows it or not, but he's competing right now. He's trying to live. He's competing against the universe.
he, you asked how old he was earlier. He's 53, but he turns 54 next month. So that would mean he'd be competing until his early 60s. And he says, you know, he's not going to try to like qualify for the tour, but he's going to compete in specialty events. And I think you and I know what that means. That means pipe, that means cloud break. It means big barreling waves, basically, which I think he's still a major threat in.
Yeah, for sure. And tip of the cap, us old guys, we're rooting for you. You're in the old guy club, Kelly. So we're all. Speaking of that, yesterday I ran into Chaz. I was at the local market, and there's this group of older surf legends from North County that are in their 80s or 90s, and they all gather for coffee every week. And they sit around, and if you know, you know. If you don't, you just go, oh, look at those old guys. There's like 10 guys, but I know that they all gather around, and they're all, you know, it's like Ed Wright from Sunset Surfboards and Tom Keck, legendary photographer, and some other shapers, and like Bill Strasby used to go there. He's since passed, but. And I ran into Chaz randomly. I was going in to get coffee. I'm like, Chaz, and we said hi, and I go, look, see those guys over there? Look at those old salty old school shapers. And he goes, that's me and you in 10 years. And I go, that's me right now, man. It was good to see Chaz.
Funny.
That was fun.
I had, I was checking out at the grocery store the other day, and the woman checker goes, oh, hello, young man. And I was like, wow, that's the first time I've been called a young man in probably a decade. And then she looks up at me. She goes, oh, yeah, I guess we're about the same age. And I look at her, and I think she looks like she's probably 60. And I'm like, I didn't say that to her, but I was like, oh my God, this went from like a nice compliment to like the most backhanded compliment I've ever received within like 3 seconds. Either she's 60 or she's my age, but she heavily smokes and drinks and she looks terrible. But I'm like, there's no way we are the same age. There's got to be a 10-year spread here. But she just said a polite compliment without really looking up. And then she looked up at me and made an assessment, and it was the exact opposite. So I thought that was funny.
Man.
I need to optimize like Kelly Slater.
Yeah.
Well, where are we at? Surfrider Foundation. The ocean needs more friends, man. Look, I think last year alone, they collected almost 400,000 pounds of trash off the beach. This is, of course, in addition to legislation that they're currently fighting against offshore oil drilling and all this sort of stuff. So really robust program that Surfrider is running, and they could use your support, and you can actually set up your level of support. You could do it for $1 a month. You could set whatever dollar amount you want and become a member at surfrider.org, and you can cancel at any time too. So support the cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you? I mean, if you love the water, if you love the ocean, this is a great entity to be involved with.
Whether or not you play in the ocean, we need the ocean as human beings for survival. So protect that. ocean.
Yeah.
And then my must-see moment presented by Treeswax, treeswax.com. Promo code SPIT saves you 20%. Presuming you like podcasts because you're listening to this podcast, a listener sent me this a couple of months ago. Took me a while to get around to listening to it, but it is an interview done with Mark Renneker. And I don't think that we hear enough from Mark Renneker. He is kind of a well-known figure who's appeared in various articles in the past. He appeared notably in Finnegan's Barbarian Days. It's called The Art. I got to look it up real quick. Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time. You're doing good.
Thanks. Thanks, Scott.
You keep Googling. And we'll be
something
fine.
The Art of Lifestyle or something like that. Ageless Athlete is what it's called. And this was about 6 months old, but it was fantastic. I think Renneker's a fascinating figure, and he's obviously a surgeon. He's a doctor. And lifelong committed surfer, mainly in Ocean Beach, but been out there for decades, long before it was crowded. So he's built his life around the ocean, but his career is fascinating, and he's just a great character. So if you want to hear Mark Renneker interviewed on a podcast, The Ageless Athlete is where you go.
That's your must-see moment. My must-see moment presented by Treeswax is the episode we've been talking about all episode long, Stab in the Dark with Kelly Slater. I think you have to be a premium subscriber to Stab to see these. And I'm not sure if they're out there on the black market somehow, but a premium subscription is well worth your dollar. And I highly suggest you do it, if nothing else, just for this one series that's coming up here, Stab in the Dark with Kelly Slater. Should be, and already is, fascinating. And my must-see moment presented by Treeswax.
I like it. Yep, I'm a fan as well. Worth the price of admission.
All right. Well, David, we've said a lot. We've got a lot going on here. And until next time, adios and aloha.